Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 387 for the 20th of March 2016. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. It rained. Yes, well, it's been raining for a few days on and off, and today the weather was actually nice and pleasant. What a change. Now, I know people listening around the world only tune into the Skeptic Zone to hear the Sydney forecast, but it certainly makes a pleasant change to have the weather cool, a little bit cooler. It's quite nice. I hope it lasts until next summer. Well, at least for a few more days so I can enjoy this cool change. Yes, that would be very nice. Now, for those of you who don't tune into the Skeptic Zone to hear the Sydney weather forecast, what's coming up this week? We're going to start with a quick update, a little update of a story we brought you some time ago about a PhD awarded by the University of Wollongong for a thesis which was, broadly speaking, anti-vaccination. Now, there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes with this story, but a small update at the beginning of the show with a vote of thanks to the Reasonable Hank blog at reasonablehank.com for the information. Reasonable Hank. The anti-vaxxers seem to think he's all sorts of people. It reminds me of that scene at the end of the movie Spartacus, where they all stand up and say, "I am Spartacus." There's about 100 people standing up at the moment saying, "I am Reasonable Hank." Well, according to the anti-vaxxers anyway. After that, we have a little review, a little look at the current issue of the Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian Skeptics, which we mention from time to time on the Skeptic Zone. I am a member of Australian Skeptics, of course, and I do write articles for the magazine, so I thought I'd just let you know what's in the current issue if you care to subscribe. Entirely up to you, but I think it's a good magazine regardless. And then after that, we get to the feature item in this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone, all about chiropractic. Now, you might remember last week we read a piece on the show about chiropractors having to, or being asked, or being forced, whatever it is, really, to toe the line, to stop making outrageous claims. This week's report is all about outrageous claims, actually, focusing on the Gonstead form of chiropractic and a very disturbing clip, an audio clip from a video where a baby gets its back manipulated, but we'll get to that later on in that report. And I'll also be reading a piece from the Australian Skeptics website about GP training versus chiropractic training. Now, I have an interesting history with chiropractic myself, and maybe some of you can relate to this. When I imagine about 11, 10, turning 11, something about that. It's all lost in the midst of time a little bit. I was the subject of a beating in the schoolyard, where a classmate who, again, it's sort of lost in the midst of time, I can't remember exactly who it was, ran up behind me, jumped on me from behind, as it were, forcing me to the ground, boom. Luckily, it was on the grass. Sat on my back in some sort of fashion, grabbed my hair, pulled my head up and beat me on the face. Yes, it was a horrible experience, especially for an 11-year-old kid. The immediate result was bruising to the face, black eyes, that sort of thing. But what I didn't know at the time was the long-term result was whiplash. When he grabbed my hair and jerked my head back, I received some injury to the vertebrae in my neck. Over the next months, this turned out to be a very agonizing problem for me, with a noticeable lump which I can still feel to this very day, some 40 years later, on the back of my neck. and it led to awful pain. And again, you put yourself in the context of an 11-year-old who is waking up with indescribable pain and confusion and not sure what's going on. And that, in turn, led to migraines. Very unpleasant. Now, you know, these things happen. Kids get beaten up in the schoolyard, and I'm sure if the kid who did this to me would have known the long-term consequences, it might have been a different story. Let's not worry about that. The point is that I had terrible pain and migraines resulting from this neck injury, which was an undiagnosed whiplash. So, again, relying on my memory, I guess within the year or maybe a year or two later, it's hard to remember, I was going to the GP to see about this neck problem, and the best he did at the time was give me painkillers. So the underlying problem wasn't really addressed at the time. My dad at the time also happened to be suffering from back issues and was seeing a chiropractor. He took me along, and I remember many times going to the chiropractor and lying down on the table, the chiropractor cradling my head as they do, and with a sudden jerking motion went my neck. And I found I had a bit more movement. And yes, that happened numerous times, but I seem to remember there was short-term relief, or at least I could sense I had more movement in my neck. Unfortunately, the migraines persisted, and it wasn't until I was really in my late 20s or 30s that they became very rare. And now I hardly ever get them at all, which is very nice. But for a kid growing up, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, having regular migraines was unpleasant, to say the least. And those of you out there who get migraines know what I'm talking about, and those who have never had a migraine, well, it's just one of those things that you can't adequately describe. Well, this is a long-winded way and a long sort of story to put it to you that at the time when I went to see chiropractors, and I did so into my 20s, I had no thought that they weren't legitimate, if you follow my meaning. I simply assumed they were a special field of medicine, doctors who specialize in something. In this case, back problems and nerve problems. I mean, when you're a little kid and your dad takes you to a clinic, and there's a guy who is just like a doctor in all other respects with a white coat, etc., and a consulting room, treats you, that's exactly what you think, and I had no reason to believe otherwise. So this is why it comes as something of a shock or surprise, or people are bemused when they discover there are people who are skeptical of the claims of chiropractic. And it's a classic example of you'll get people who go to chiropractors and will swear by them, black and blue, that they absolutely work and they're fine. And the internet, I've just had a look on YouTube, is full of people with glowing testimonials and endorsements. And in fact, I even ran a search for chiropractic and skeptic, just those two words on YouTube, and it's case after case of videos titled, "Was Skeptical of Chiropractic," or "Skeptic Converted with Chiropractic," and so on and so forth. But as we remember that testimonials aren't worth the paper they're not written on, and testimonials are not evidence, etc. Keep all that in mind a bit later on in the show when you're hearing the report on chiropractic. That, for many people, it's not exactly beyond question. The question doesn't come into their heads that they should be skeptical of chiropractic, because they just accept it as a normal medical speciality. Phew. Well, after that tale of woe from my from my childhood, it's all right now. I hardly get any migraines, I promise, which is a great relief. Anyway, I'm going to run downstairs and I'm going to have a bit of chocolate, because it's nearly Easter time and I don't care what anybody says. I do enjoy chocolate at Easter or any time of the year. I like white chocolate, dark chocolate, in between chocolate, or a bit of both, or whatever it is. I think I have some in the fridge. I'm going to run downstairs, open up the fridge, find that chocolate, and while I'm munching that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Here's a slight update to a story we brought you some weeks, or was it even months ago, where Julie Wilyman, now Dr. Julie Wilyman PhD, received her PhD from the University of Wollongong for a thesis that has been broadly called an anti-vaccination piece. This led to many articles across the media condemning the situation, the awarding of this PhD, and it's a continuing story. Dr. Wilyman now has a online newsletter. And I quote from Newsletter 100, Australian Politicians Presenting Myths About Vaccination, where towards the end of the newsletter it says, in Australia, the whooping cough vaccine is promoted on anecdotal evidence, parents promoting the death of their child to whooping cough, and lobby groups such as Australian Skeptics, who have many supporters in the Stop the Australian Vaccination Network Facebook page, have provided awards to these parents for their efforts. Australian parents are not promoting vaccines for awards or financial gain, but it is important for the community to know that they receive financial rewards from pro-vaccine lobby groups for their efforts. Public health policy is not designed on anecdotal evidence. Australians should also know that medical practitioners receive thousands of dollars in grants from pharmaceutical companies to increase the vaccination rates of their practices. Please consider these conflicts of interest in the public health policy and consider all the medical literature, or the absence of evidence, when you decide to vaccinate yourself or your child. Dr. Julie Wilyman, www.vaccinationdecisions.net. Now, these financial rewards that Dr. Wilyman talks about with regard to the Australian Skeptics is that the Australian Skeptics, that is, awarded the parents of baby Riley, who died from whooping cough, the Fred Thornett Award, which we do most years for people who are in the general community promote science and good reason. The parents of baby Riley donated the money associated with the Fred Thornett Prize to charity. More on this continuing story as it comes to hand.
Hi, this is Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. We are a group of concerned citizens dedicated to promoting good science and common sense in our region, the far north coast of New South Wales. This area, famous for its natural beauty and relaxed lifestyle, also has the lowest rates of vaccination in Australia. We are out to change that by challenging the myths and misinformation and by providing good evidence-based information to the community. We'd love for you, no matter where you are in the world, to join our fight. Please visit our webpage at www.nrvs.info. We also have a link there to our Facebook page. Tweet us at NRVaxSupporters, that's VAX, and check us out on Wikipedia by searching for Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Thank you.
Now, you often hear me talking about items and articles and bits and pieces from the Australian Skeptics. I am in the Australian Skeptics, so that's no surprise. And you'll often hear on the Skeptic Zone talk of the Skeptic Magazine, the Journal of Australian Skeptics, which has been in publication now for 36 years. I have here in my hands the latest issue of the Skeptic. What a dramatic cover it has. It's a sort of an ancient Egyptian sphinx-type, mummy-type sarcophagus picture. to do with one of the stories in the magazine, Dark Ages and Pharaohs. But there's much more in this current issue, which is volume 36, number 1 for March 2016. Some of the reports covered in this issue are the ABC TV Catalyst program and their Why Fried fiasco, the awarding of a PhD for anti-vaccination by the University of Wollongong, more from ancient history, or an article by longtime skeptic and former editor of the Skeptic Magazine, Barry Williams. We have articles by Steve Roberts about planets and outer space. The article by me and Dr. Chrissy Wilson, which you can download for free at skeptics.com.au, the medium neither read nor well done, where we analyse the cold reading, or the reading, maybe I should say, of psychic Lisa Williams. An article by our very own Joe Alabaster about black salve, and so much more. It's a worthwhile magazine. You can subscribe and have it posted to you, so you can read it in the bath, or on the train, or whatever the case may be. Or, as many people are doing, for half the price, you can have it delivered to your inbox as a PDF. And, well, I enjoy getting the paper copy myself, but I also have a copy on my iPad for ease of reading. That's the Skeptic Magazine. You can subscribe at skeptics.com.au. And just noticing in the Skeptic Magazine, there's a little blurb there for the upcoming Australian Skeptics National Convention, the 32nd National Convention. Now, this will be in Melbourne, wonderful Melbourne, on the 25th to the 27th of November 2016. Although the tickets won't go on sale until June, it's worth putting those dates aside in your calendar. Already slated to appear are Lawrence Krauss and Edzard Ernst. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the Australian Skeptics conventions. One of the things I love about them is the awarding of the Bent Spoon Award. So there you are, the latest issue of the Skeptic Magazine, as compiled and edited by our very own Tim Mendham.
Hello, Richard and all the listeners of Skeptic Zone. My name is Ran Levy, and I'm the producer and co-host of Curious Mind. It's a podcast about science, technology, and history at www.cmpod.net. Each episode will bring you interesting stories from a wide range of subjects, from physics to astronomy and medicine, from arts to science fiction. We strive for the highest production values both in content and in delivery. We already have on the air episodes about German U-boats in the Second World War, about the history of X-rays and the war of currents between Tesla and Edison. Come and have a listen. www.cmpod.net.
Last week's Skeptic Zone, I read a piece by Tim Mendham, the editor of the Skeptic Magazine here in Australia, about chiropractors and their requirements to toe the line, as it were, to operate under the guidelines of the various chiropractic boards. Now, in a few moments, I'll be reading another piece by Tim Mendham about chiropractic versus GP when it comes to their training. How much training does a GP receive compared to how much training a chiropractor receives? Also, in a moment, I'll be playing some clips I've found on YouTube with some various claims made by chiropractors and even the sound of a baby's spine being manipulated. More of that in a moment. But for a sort of an overview of chiropractic, I thought I would read from the course guide notes from Dr. Harriet Hall. Regular Skeptic Zone listeners will know that I play promotional clips for Dr. Harriet Hall's series on science-based medicine and various alternative medicine modalities. It's an excellent video series, and indeed we interviewed Dr. Hall about this series on episode 372, which was podcast on the 6th of December 2015. Worth going into the archives and revisiting that interview. So from the course guide notes for the segment on chiropractic, we read, false claims. These are false claims made by chiropractic. Chiropractic is a science. Chiropractic is based on neurology, anatomy, and physiology. Chiropractors are doctors of the nervous system. Chiropractic improves health and quality of life. In reality, invented by a grocer all by himself in a single day, September the 18th, 1895, D.D. Palmer believed all illness was caused by bones out of place. He extrapolated from a single case based on a misunderstanding of anatomy, based on false theory, the mythical chiropractic subluxation, impairment of nerve flow, interference with a mystical vitalistic power, innate, that maintains health. Chiropractic manipulation can have adverse effects. Strokes from back manipulation, broken bones, hemorrhage, herniated disc, paralysis, death. Half of all patients have mild to moderate side effects, often associated with quackery. Bogus tests used by some chiropractors, biological terrain assessment, computerized nutrition deficiency testing, contact reflex analysis, electrodermal screening, functional intercellular analysis, FIA, hair analysis, herbal crystallization analysis, iridology, leg length testing to check for subluxations, live blood analysis, also called nutritional blood analysis or HemoView, testing with a nervoscope, NutraBalance, NutriSpec, pendulum divination, reflexology, saliva testing, spinal ultrasound testing to measure progress, surface electromyography, SEMG, thermography testing with a toughness device, weighing on a twin scale device, spinal analysis machine. 43% of American chiropractors use applied kinesiology, a bogus muscle testing procedure for both testing and treatment. Bogus treatments used by many chiropractors: acupuncture, activator methods, applied kinesiology, bioelectric synchronization technique, BEST, chelation therapy, colonic irrigation, cranial or cranioscalpal therapy, laser acupuncture, magnetic or biomagnetic therapy, neuroemotional technique, NET, neuroorganization technique, NOT, homeopathic products, unproven dietary supplements, or herbal products. Some chiropractors do bad things, including unnecessary x-rays, unethical advertising, 50% discourage immunization, discourage conventional medical care, offer lifelong maintenance adjustments, misdiagnose or fail to refer appropriately, treat young children and even newborns whose spines haven't finished forming. More on that soon. Presume to function as family doctors. Types of chiropractors. Straights. Do chiropractic adjustments only. Mixers. Add other treatments, everything from massage to voodoo. Upper cervical chiropractors. Only adjust the top vertebra of the neck. Reform chiropractors who reject the subluxation concept and try to practice evidence-based chiropractic. The only thing chiropractors do that has been definitely proven effective is spinal manipulation treatment, SMT, for certain types of lower back pain. There is nothing uniquely chiropractic about SMT. It's also used by physiotherapists and others. It is no more effective in the long run than other treatments for lower back pain, but it is a reasonable option for people who prefer it, and it may offer earlier relief. If you want to see a chiropractor, Here's a list of what you should look for. Rejects subluxation theory. No full spine x-rays. No quack products or tests. No preventative or maintenance adjustments. No promotion of unproven dietary supplements. Doesn't pretend to be a family doctor. Doesn't treat young children. No antagonism to the scientific method. Doesn't discourage immunizations. Limited to short-term treatment of musculoskeletal problems. Knows when to refer. Bottom line, if a chiropractor offers spinal manipulation treatment for a short-term treatment of certain kinds of musculoskeletal pain, he might be able to help you. If he offers to adjust your subluxations or treat problems elsewhere in the body, it's best to avoid him. Horror stories illustrate just how unscientific chiropractic can be. Chiropractic research. Studies are generally poor, usually without controls, and often are simply case reports that are poorly documented. No real progress has been made in over a century. Their research has never found a treatment ineffective. They keep adding treatment methods and never give up on any of them. So that was a quick overview of some of the course guide notes from the Harriet Hall video on chiropractic. Again, you can just visit skepdoc.info for the link to the videos, which I recommend, and the course guide notes. Now let's hear some of the claims made for chiropractic, specifically the branch of chiropractic called Gonstead. Now this is named after Clarence Gonstead, 1898 to 1978, and to read from the Gonstead Chiropractic Society of Australia's website, chiropractic began with Daniel D. Palmer giving his first adjustment in September 1895 in Davenport, Iowa. Today there are many methods used by chiropractors to correct spinal misalignments, joint dysfunctions, and subluxation complexes. Many techniques are identified by the name of the person who was most instrumental in their development. One of the most advanced and scientific methods is called the Gonstead system. Dr. Gonstead developed his procedure as a result of extensive clinical research. These procedures were developed over many years of clinical observation and research to work out how to get sick patients well. Dr. Gonstead's 55 years of continuous practice and over 4 million chiropractic adjustments resulted in the most complete method of biomechanical analysis available for use by today's doctors and chiropractors. Many of Dr. Gonstead's clinical approaches, theories, and results are now being explained by modern scientific research and studies. Dr. Gonstead was asked by other chiropractors to teach them what he did and how he got the results that he did. This led to the development of the Gonstead Seminar in the mid-1940s, and a systematic approach to explaining the way he practiced and got sick patients well. Here are some of the claims being made by chiropractors today.
Our chiropractic research suggests, and our clinical experience, that we may be able to help your child to breathe easier with their asthma, or improve their posture and feet alignment, to help them to build stronger immune systems against colds and ear infections, and to help manage any other childhood ailments including colic, ADHD, bedwetting, birth trauma, and sporting injuries.
Asthma is one of the many conditions that we get fantastic results with through chiropractic care. Case after case after case of people that have had breathing issues, that are borderline bronchitis, pneumonia, but especially asthma. We've been able to help people get off of their inhalers and actually take a nice deep breath for the first time in their lives. Believe it or not, we've had many patients come here seeking help with urinary tract infections and kidney problems. We've had many patients that have had borderline kidney failure that have responded through chiropractic help. Now, you may ask yourself, how can an adjustment in the back actually affect the kidneys? Well, it's very simple. Wherever the brain goes, it has to communicate with those organs through the nervous system. Quite simply, the function of a chiropractor is to remove any interference in the nervous system. Therefore, if you have a blockage of that nerve going to the kidney, And that's what's causing that kidney to shut down. Doesn't it make sense that interference needs to be removed? As a nation, we don't get enough sleep. Many times this is due to a misalignment of the pelvis, specifically your hips. What we will do is evaluate and see whether or not your hips are misaligned. When those hips are actually off, what it does is cause muscle imbalance and make sleeping very uncomfortable. Parents, this one's for you. If your children have ear infections, you must get them checked. I beseech you not to give them antibiotics and go the natural route. If you know of children who are suffering with chronic ear infections, please bring them in and have them evaluated. Let's see if we can help them the natural way, the chiropractic way.
Which brings us to a very short clip, which I discovered at the YouTube channel entitled Chiropractic Excellence. I'll play the clip now and give you a brief explanation.
But it'll look more than that. Because she's so flexible, I'm going to have to get some extension in her spine. Okay. I'm going to take that contact there like that. I have to, unfortunately, just extend her a little bit to get it in the right place. That's why we be quick. Hey, darling. Hey.
Now, to set the scene, what you just heard, the chiropractor was sitting on a chair, 4-day-old baby lying across his lap, face down, and the chiropractor pushed his hands into the baby's spine and cracked the baby's back. And then you hear the crying. Let's listen to that again.
Contact there like that. I have to, unfortunately, just extend her a little bit to get it in the right place. That's why we be quick. Hey, darling. Hey.
And it looks far worse than it sounds when you see this little baby's back being pushed in. It really made me wince, and it makes me wince every time I see it. But now we'll turn to an item posted on the Australian Skeptics website. As published at www.skeptics.com.au, 22nd of February by Tim Mendham. Chiro versus GP. Who's more qualified? Is it true that GPs and chiropractors do much of the same level of training and are thus equally qualified to practice primary health care? Should chiropractors play the role that GPs currently do as the first stop for medical consultation? The argument used by chiropractors to practice as primary health care is that they must go through the same level of medical training as GPs, including the same courses, and are thus as qualified to offer primary health care as GPs. The question is whether this is true. The vision statement of the chiropractic profession's peak body, the Chiropractors Association of Australia, CAA, positions chiropractic as an alternative healthcare system distinct from the mainstream, and aims to, quote, achieve a fundamental paradigm shift in the healthcare direction where chiropractic is recognised as the most cost-efficient and effective healthcare regime of first choice, and is readily accessible to all people, end quote. In an article on the Choice website, Karina Bray, senior content producer, Health for Choice, laid out some of the issues associated with chiropractic and the differences between it and the GP profession. Apart from the level of qualifications, these issues included the anti-vaccination stance of many chiropractors, the potential for misdiagnosis, and preventative manipulations which may cause problems where none previously existed. The claim for chiropractic training. Oz Sid Guy 35 responded to Bray's article on the Choice site with a comment that the article was biased, with Bray apparently showing a lack of understanding of what training chiropractors go through. Quote, which is a full 3-year bachelor's degree in science followed by a 2 years master's degree. If anyone does some research instead of taking extreme biased views, they can clearly see chiropractors do take extensive training and just as much as GPs, in the science side of things. The courses are very similar. GPs require, and the same as chiropractors courses in anatomy, physiology, physics, chemistry, biochemistry, neuroanatomy, etc. These courses do not differ. They are not taught by anyone different either. The person in question teaching the specific course has to have a degree in that specific course. For example, a biochemistry teacher has to have a bachelor's of biochemistry with honours, etc., depending on the university of the min requirements. Hence, some are better than others, just like medicine. Both require a minimum, though, rest assured, as per law. Chiropractors also learn ECG monitoring, blood pressure, etc. That's why they can do this stuff also, as you get taught this in anatomy and physiology second level. The only parts where they differ is GPs branch off into getting training for drugs, where chiropractors usually keep going with even more in-depth anatomy and physiology specific to what they deal with each day. Even the years are the same. Check out the Australian AMA page. Takes 4 to 6 years. Chiropractic takes minimum 5. The medical does a further 1 year, normally hospital residency. A chiropractic does this in addition to its normal studies for 2 years in their master's degree. Both are classified as doctors. One is of medicine and prescribes drugs. The other is a non-drug prescribing profession. Both have their needs in society. Most nurses, or MDs, agree with this, end quote. Oz Sid Guy admits that, quote, more research is needed, end quote, but adds, quote, if people are getting a relief from this and there is a lack of scientific evidence around, that does not mean it does not work. Just means we need more studies to show why it works in people, that it does and how. End quote. There are many chiropractors who would share Oz Sid Guy's views. Unfortunately, it's not true. The reality of medical training. Mr. John Cunningham is an Australian-trained orthopaedic surgeon who specialises in the treatment of spinal disorders. He is a Fellow of the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons and of the Australian Orthopaedic Association. In the 2016 Australia Day Honours, he was awarded a medal in the Order of Australia, OAM, for services to medicine and to the promotion of immunisation. He suggests that Oz Sid Guy's, quote, understanding of the chiropractic training and the training of GPs is considerably lacking, end quote. For a start, Mr. Cunningham says a GP must complete a medical degree, which these days is often a 6 to 7 year program of medical sciences as well as clinical medicine. It is taught by scientists specialized in the field as well as clinicians. Quote, medical practitioners are taught evidence-based medicine. Meanwhile, chiropractors are taught make-believe, like Gonstead, pregnancy and pediatric chiropractic, completely without evidence. Medical students are not taught by chiropractors, nor are chiropractors taught by medical practitioners. The courses differ, and they differ enormously. How do I know? Because I did a science degree with chiropractors at University of New South Wales before completing a medical degree. While their science degree was similar, they only did one major degree in anatomy and so missed out on physiology and biochemistry. Just anatomy. They were not exposed to nearly as much detail as the other subjects as medical students, nor did they learn anything about human behavior, microbiology, or pharmacology. Just anatomy. To even suggest that chiropractors learn ECGs in the same detail as a medical practitioner is laughable. Making a claim that the two streams simply branch off is ridiculous. They share no common ground to begin with and cannot branch off, as Oz Sid Guy puts it. And a medical degree is only the start. GPs must complete a 3-year vocational training pathway covering many aspects of medicine not covered in detail in the undergraduate section of training, as well as passing more exams and then a fellowship exam. So we're up to 10 years just now. And Oz Sid Guy thinks that we're only about drugs? What do GPs see? Only the broadest range of conditions that can be treated with evidence-based medicine. Yes, drugs are used, but what about, say, an asthma plan, diabetes counselling, family planning, psychiatric care, end-of-life care, pediatrics, learning difficulties, musculoskeletal complaints, dermatology? I could go on, but to simplify things to the idea that, quote, all GPs do is prescribing drugs, end quote, is ludicrous. A chiropractor is trained now at universities, Mr. Cunningham says, but, quote, many aspects of their curriculum are not evidence-based. Simple as that. And saying more research is needed is not the same as saying it works. Much research has already been done, and the only thing that chiropractors can treat better than GPs is acute back pain, and only then in a small subset of patients. Researching it more may provide more evidence for other conditions, but it also may not. One's chickens should not be counted before they're hatched. Suggesting that chiropractors can replace GPs because some of their subjects have the same broad title as each other is blatantly false. You might make the same claim about physiotherapists, osteopaths, nurses, pharmacists, and I could go on. GPs have their place, and that is as the primary family physician. Chiropractors should learn their place too, and it's not where they think it is, end quote. And that was Chiro versus GP, Who's More Qualified?, written by Tim Mendham, published at www.skeptics.com.au.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Coming up on next week's show, I hope we can hear some more from our wonderful reporters. Maynard, don't forget to visit maynard.com.au for his podcast, Bunga Bunga, and lots of other Maynard craziness. Joe Alabaster, who has a blog at evidenceplease.net. And Joe does some wonderful reports for the Skeptic Zone. I always look forward to Evidence Please with Joe Alabaster. And between you and me, I think she's got one of the best speaking voices in the business. In fact, if you want a really cool voiceover artist, Joe's your woman. Heidi Robertson, of course, with the Raw Skeptic, and her website, the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters, is at nrvs.info. Also, our good friend Dr. Raichi, whose blog is the Skeptics Book at skepticsbook.com, spelt with a C. Iran Segiev, of course, with a grain of salt, who chips in every now and then. And, well, I guess you can go to the Australian Skeptics website to find out more about Iran Segeb. But what was I saying? Oh, yes, well, next week I hope we hear a report from one of our, or even more, of our wonderful reporters. And thanks to the people who write to our reporters and congratulate them or ask for their advice about different things. That's part of the reason they're on the Skeptic Zone. But for this week, with what's that I hear outside? Yeah, rain coming down on the roof once again. Great. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.